You may have heard on the news this afternoon, story that actually broke earlier in the day today. So it turns out a judge has authorized a class action lawsuit against the Quebec government on behalf of all CHSLDs that experienced COVID outbreaks. Now, remember, these are public CHSLDs, not the private ones, but this is very substantial, and we thought we'd break this down for you. We all know what it was like. We all know the tragedy that was endured by so many people, families at some of these CHSLDs, and this has been a long time coming. Patrick Martin-Ménard is a lawyer at Ménard Martin Lawyers. He represents members of the class action. He is on the line. Monsieur Martin-Ménard, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Can you fill us in exactly how this is going to work, who is necessarily in this class action suit and who isn't?
Okay, so the court authorized the class action with respect to all CHSLDs that had a severe COVID-19 outbreak during the first or second wave of COVID-19. And the court defines a severe COVID-19 outbreak as an outbreak in which more than 25% of the residents of the CHSLD were infected with COVID-19. So based on that, we've put a list on our website of the CHSLDs that are part of this class action. There is around 118 CHSLDs that are included in our preliminary list based on the available data. So essentially, the way that the class action will proceed now is that it will proceed as any other file on the merit. And at the end, if there is a successful outcome, group members will be able to make a claim based on the prejudice that they have suffered.
So do you have to have been a resident in one of the CHSLDs? What if you're
Or
a
a
family
relative,
member? How
yeah.
would it work?
So essentially, the class action, the group is comprised both of the residents as well as the family members, being the surviving spouse, the children, the grandchildren, or the family caregiver of the people in the CHSLD.
Okay, so we're talking between 6,000 and 7,000 residents, and then we don't know how many family members that may entail. You mentioned there that they'll have to file for a claim. I thought usually with class action lawsuits, you were automatically involved and included in it.
So the members of the group are automatically members of the group, but they will not automatically receive a compensation at the end. If they want to receive a compensation, if there is a successful outcome, which is not at all a guarantee, and when there is a successful outcome, then they have to make a claim in order to get the compensation. They are responsible for that. They will not automatically receive a compensation.
Oh, okay. And we know, we're assuming that the Quebec government, and again, it's early on in this process, is going to appeal this decision. Is that what you're expecting?
We don't have any expectation in one way or another, but they have the possibility to appeal it if they decide to do so. They have a 30-day delay. Both the government and the healthcare authorities, which are represented by different attorneys, have that possibility.
Okay.
I understand, obviously, the goal here is to get some compensation for victims and people who were affected by this. But is there a hope, I suppose, that going forward that this kind of situation won't replicate itself, that this won't happen again?
Yes, that is definitely a very strong motivation, both on our part and on the part of Mr. Daubois, the class representative, that we learn some lessons from what happened in 2020, and that we do not forget what happened in 2020. We have a duty of memory, a duty to remember the tragedy that we suffered, and I think we often just have a tendency to want to turn the page quickly on this, and it's not the right approach. We have to look at what happened and make sure that we retain the valuable lessons to ensure that something like this does not happen again. And I think in that respect, there is still a lot of work to be done.
Did you break down the amounts? Because I'm looking at numbers here, and then I saw something about $10 million in punitive damages. What is the breakdown of what you're seeking?
So we're seeking punitive damages, which is essentially a distinct part of the claim on behalf of, and the court authorized it on behalf of residents only, essentially for the breach in their fundamental rights that they suffered as a result of what happened. So this is one aspect. Another aspect, of course, is the individual damages that are claimed both for residents, essentially, which is broken down between residents who were deceased as a result of COVID-19 or the lack of basic care, residents who got COVID-19 but survived, and the other residents who did not get COVID-19 but had to live through the very difficult conditions in these CHSLDs. And then there is also a personal claim for the relatives of residents, spouses, children, and grandchildren of residents. As for the amounts mentioned, again, there are amounts claimed in the originating application. As I mentioned, there is no guarantee whatsoever that this will have a favorable outcome.
Mm-hmm.
If it does, then the amounts that are given at this time will be precise. It will be specified in the outcome, whether it's a settlement agreement or a judgment at the end of the case.
So as it stands right now, the numbers I'm looking at, and I understand, as you just said, that that's not a guarantee of necessarily anything, but the suit looks for compensation of at least $100,000 for each member who was infected, $40,000 for class members who didn't get sick, and as you said, additional compensation for both groups' families. So time frame wise, can you lay out how long? You said they have 30 days, the government does, to decide what they're going to do, appeal or not. Then what happens?
Then the file, if there is no appeal, the file will proceed as the normal civil liability file does proceed. There will be several pre-trial steps, including out-of-court examinations, including exchange of information called undertakings, filing of a defense, filing of exhibits, filing of expert reports on one side and the other. All of these steps will take substantial time, and there may also be a number of procedural incidents that happen or debates that happen within these steps. So we're certainly looking at years before this eventually gets to trial, if it gets to this point. It's a very complex file, but we're determined to move forward with this file diligently as fast as possible.
Okay. Is there any possibility that the government just says, yeah, you're right, here's some money?
Maybe not in these terms, but there is always the possibility to have an out-of-court settlement in all of these files. So it's certainly a possibility here as it is in any file, but this will depend on the analysis that the opposing counsels will make of the file and of discussions that we could have between lawyers, which are always confidential discussions.
So just as a final question, so we understand here, I read the amounts, you talk about 100,000, 40,000, but there's always a process of negotiation, I would guess. You could be asking for 100, the government might offer one thing, and you can still settle, or who makes that determination? Is that between the parties, or does a judge decide?
So in the end, if there is a settlement agreement, first of all, it can be a settlement that would be based on a number of factors, a number of scenarios, and then the settlement would have to be approved by the court, and there would be an approval hearing, and group members then would have the possibility to either object to the approval or make comments on the settlement agreement. And after the court approves it, then the formal claim process would start, and then the distribution would happen. But these are all hypothetical at this point. We're still very far from that, and there is still a lot of work to be done before we get to that result.
And perhaps the most important thing for people hearing this, thinking this is a wonderful step, you said you used the word years before we get anything, so please, I think everyone ought to keep that in mind too. Monsieur Ménard, thank you so much. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Patrick Martin-Ménard, he's a lawyer, Ménard Martin. They're the ones taking the government to task on this. We shall see. It's going to be very interesting. Tom McCare was talking about this earlier, right? How the government responds, right?
I can't imagine them not appealing this, and we'll have to see.
We'll see.
But I
think
like
James
this.
Meny, was talking about this earlier on.
And there is also, that's where I got that concept from, the idea that they might just want to try to make this go away as quickly as possible, so it's a distant memory by the time the election rolls around.
Here's some money, and just forget about it. We don't want to have this in the news every day for the next 2 years.
Especially as we head into an election in 2025.